Metal elitism. It's been passed around on every musical form ever, and it's been talked about to death, but I want to provide a little bit of a different perspective and talk a little bit about why metal elitism exists and not just shit down its throat, because you know me, I like playing devil's advocate. I'm just gonna say my opinion right off the bat is I think metal elitism is genuinely stupid. I think it sets back a lot of progress in musical genres, not just metal, but anything, but I can understand where some of the opinions come from, and that's what I'm going to go into here. So listen, I'm not going to go over the things that you've heard a million times about how heavy metal elitism is like the scourge of the earth and it's the worst of the worst. I want to more talk about the philosophy of gatekeeping and metal elitism and why it is simultaneously a harmful thing but also a potentially productive thing depending on what form it comes in. Elitism of any sort, not just for heavy metal but in general, always boils down to one thing, and that is a purist ideology that basically believes that whatever you enjoy, whatever niche that is, whether it be a genre, a musical genre, a book series, a TV series, a comic book series, anime, whatever it may be, is going to be tainted if it goes out of the confinements of what it has predetermined and been in up until that point. Heavy metal elitism and musical elitism as a whole oftentimes will gatekeep certain artists or gatekeep certain genres within the culture because they think that anyone that is going to come in is going to taint the lifeblood of said genre or band or whatever it may be. Because generally speaking, someone that is just coming into a genre isn't going to quote-unquote know the ropes as much as a veteran of the genre. You'll know this with like the term true cult in black metal, where the culture that built up around black metal can sometimes be very unwelcoming to outsiders coming into their culture because they have a very strict set of rules and have-nots that dictate if you meet the criteria to be true cult. But true cult isn't the only type of thing that this exists in. You could say true cult exists for almost every genre. The only reason it's true cult is because of the black metal aspects, but this exists in heavy metal, thrash metal, death metal, metalcore, whatever it may be. Now, genres that became most popular in the 2000s and the 2010s, I'm talking genres like nu metal and metalcore and deathcore, generally speaking, are a lot more, they take a lot more liberties when it comes to bringing new ideas into the forefront. That's why you see a lot of bands in metalcore and deathcore taking experimentation in and building up those influences. It's usually with some of the older extreme metal genres specifically that these things are not as appreciated, namely death metal, grindcore, and black metal are the ones that I'm going to be using as the primary examples here. It all comes back to building up a standard for what you expect the material to be. Now, simultaneously, this can really harm progress and musical experimentation and can lead to a lot of projects or bands being pigeonholed into a position where they either stick to the status quo and potentially succumb to becoming more musically and sonically stale over time, or just feel like they are constricted so much by the fan base to where that if they go out of those boundaries that have been built up around them, that they are going to somehow not only be disenfranchising their fan base, but disallowing their own credibility within the culture that that specific genre has. You can see this happen a lot in black metal, specifically in the 2000s and most notoriously in the 2010s when the black gaze movement came around and bands like Death Heaven, bands like Alcest were coming around. These bands were taking black metal and mixing it with post-metal and shoegaze music specifically. It was very shimmering, it was very beautiful, and oftentimes the production was not what you would expect. Up until that point, black metal had prided itself on being very brittle, lo-fi, bare bones, scant, minimalistic, lo-fi, what you could say. And suddenly there is this new insurgence of people that are discovering black metal that were off-put by the culture and the music prior and are finally saying, this is what I enjoy from black metal. And therefore you start to see the pipeline where more bands start to crop up and know that there is an audience for the music that they want to create. And this in turn brings more people into black metal. And certainly these bands could be gateway bands for people that get into more extreme varieties of black metal. But by the same token, the culture that had been built up around black metal is suddenly going to be infiltrated by the people that are considered normies or casual casual listeners. And veterans of the genre are going to think that their purest genre is going to be tainted by these newcomers. And it doesn't boil down to them just gatekeeping a genre solely because they want it to stay in a specific lane, because they might still like experimentation. It's more so about the mainstream validity of a genre when it crops up and takes form. And this happened especially in the 2000s, even with the metalcore scene. Because, okay, if you want to divide metalcore up into multiple different segments of the waves, you obviously had the 90s bands, and even if you want to go back to the late 80s, you had bands like Ringworm, and then you had Integrity and Earth Crisis. But then you had the mall emo take form, and post-hardcore started to blend with metalcore, and you had bands like Falling in Reverse, Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens, Black Veil Brides, Asking Alexandria, Bring Me the Horizon, Bullet for My Valentine, taking over the niche and making it very popular. And suddenly, people that had been brought up on like the New England metalcore scene and liked bands like Converge and Hatebreed and Dillinger Escape Plan and these like purist bands were suddenly being tainted in their genre, and in their eyes, the genre that they had come to know and love were suddenly being tainted by these newcomers that were infiltrating their style and changing it into something else. At the end of the day, it is a very subjective argument when it comes to what is wrong and what is right in terms of experimentation, and genre gatekeeping as a whole is just very harmful. But when your culture is built up in a certain way, and someone comes in and tries to rewrite that foundation with their own mind when they don't know anything of what they're talking about, even if it's not music, if you put that in another context, it probably would piss you off. It would be the equivalent, if you want me to make like an analogy just off the top of my head, let's say that you were a really, really fucking good lumberjack. You were one of the best people in your entire area when it came to chopping down wood, knowing the angles, knowing the tools, knowing the proper equipment that you should use, the proper gloves that you should use, how you should like swing, the technique, and you do this for like 10 years, and you build up a community of people around you where you teach them this technique, and it is shown to work and it's shown to be good. And then someone comes along with a potentially, I'm just putting this in air quotes, more inferior technique, that do not know anything about being a lumberjack, but just want to be a lumberjack because they heard word on the street is that it's popular, and suddenly 100 more people like that appear behind him, and they all have these weird techniques that don't really get the job done properly in your eyes, while you sort of fall away because you're part of that underground now. And it's weird how the shift of that can make bands that were well respected and popular, if you thought of that genre, not necessarily obsolete, but a hell of a lot less of a household name compared to some of those mainstream bands that take their place and bring it into the mainstream. And musical gatekeeping in a lot of ways for these people is a defensive mechanism to try to keep the purity of your genre from these newcomers. And that lumberjack analogy I just made, I think, is a prime example of what it looks like if you put it in layman's terms. I'm not necessarily saying that I agree whatsoever with genre elitism. I am very anti-elitist and zero tolerance when it comes to genre gatekeeping. I've talked about this topic before, just not in this light. I personally think it's stupid. I don't think you should genre gatekeep. I think you're just making your own genre stagnant. That's how bands like Nile over the years have gone stale to a lot of people. But it is a subjective debate at the end of the day, and I want to hear what you guys think about metal elitism and gatekeeping, and if you agree or disagree with the nature of it. What were your thoughts of this video? Let me know down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying, fair.